This is Fresh Tracks Weekly. Well, last weekend was a blast. We went out and found some turkeys opening morning. I ended up calling this guy in. He came in really close. Unfortunately, a little too close. Kara ended up missing him. Doesn't help that we had an extra full choke in, so she missed the first shot. And the turkey hesitated long enough at 40 yards that I was able to get him. But luckily, we did run into more turkeys that day, and that evening, Kara made a perfect shot on a tom that time. So as soon as we got home, tossed my bird into a brine so we could cook them up for an office lunch, actually a couple office lunches. So I've started doing this on pretty much every turkey where I pluck them, I cut the legs and wings off, I smoke the carcass separate from those legs and wings, and then I take the legs and wings and braise those down like into just slow cook them, and you can cook them into all sorts of dishes. So we had the smoked turkey breast for lunch and the classic mashed potatoes and gravy, delicious. But the next day, braised those legs and wings down and then turned a portion of it into Thai turkey basil stir fry. Turned out really good. We're gonna make a full video on that later, but super tasty. But anyway, Michael finally got that boat out, so we need to check in with him and see what he has going on.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Fishing Corner, Fresh Tracks Weekly, episode 39. Wow, almost over the hill here. So fishing wise, I was fortunate enough to get out on the boat last weekend. Got to fish some new water. Wound up pulling a pike out and a couple big walleyes and a rainbow trout. Basically, it was just slow jigging really close to the bottom. I was using like a smelt-looking bait, soft plastic with the jig head. And the water temperatures are starting to come up a little bit, which is really nice because it's been a really long winter and those fish are pretty lethargic when it's super low. But besides that, I've been getting out and doing a lot of bass fishing actually, and I've been catching them on spinner baits on windy days, and that's really the only way I've been catching them. I caught one on a Ned rig last night, which is just like a little worm dragging on the bottom. Starting to get a little bit excited for some trout stuff here in the near future. But this weekend, I think I'm going to focus back on some warm water species, do some walleye fishing, maybe go back to where I went last Saturday. Who knows? But I will tell you that if you're a Fresh Tracks Plus member, Anything Goes is going up on Monday. So check it out. Also, it's Earth Day on Saturday. So this year, I'm going to like pledge or try really hard to pick up more trash when I'm out fishing this year. That's my Earth Day activity, and I'll be out enjoying the earth, doing some fishing, I'm sure. So thanks for having me, Marcus. This is the Fishing Corner.
All right, on to some news. The snow keeps coming and is hanging on a lot in the Rockies. Looking at the snowtail sites across the western U.S., the majority of them are 150% snow water equivalent or greater, which is just crazy. Montana is actually doing better in a lot of our areas. We don't have quite as much snowpack, a lot of around average or a little above average. Tough times for critters for sure, but in some areas it has been super helpful with the long-term drought and filling up some of these depleted aquifers. In Arizona, the snow levels are so high in certain areas that the Arizona Game and Fish just sent out an email warning turkey hunters that some areas will be inaccessible. The pictures on the screen show just how crazy some of the snowpack is. Pretty wild that it can be 100 degrees in Phoenix and then not too far away at higher elevations, the snow still hasn't melted. I looked at the two snowtail sites that are still up and running in Arizona, and they're both over 300% of snow water equivalent. Anyway, spring will be here soon enough. Last week in Idaho, a Fish and Game conservation officer shot and killed a domestic dog for chasing deer. The officer was responding to an unrelated call when people informed him that they witnessed two dogs chase and kill a mule deer fawn, and the dogs continued to chase deer afterwards. The officer found the dead fawn and witnessed one of the dogs still chasing deer, at which point he shot and killed it. In Idaho law, it is legal to destroy a dog, those are their words, when it's actively tracking, pursuing, harassing, attacking, or killing a big game animal. But only a Fish and Game director, peace officer, or person authorized to enforce Idaho Fish and Game laws can be the one to destroy the dog. In this case, the Fish and Game officer then returned the dead dog to its owner, while the owner of that second dog, the dog that was not shot, was issued a citation and a $136 fine. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks just sent out an email detailing how they are embarking on mule deer monitoring, research, and outreach initiatives This is timely because we were just talking about what is killing all the mule deer last week, and this initiative is a result of the long-term decline in mule deer populations. They didn't go too deep into what is killing all the mule deer other than listing the usual suspects of things like winter kill, drought, short-term and long-term habitat changes, and predators. Interestingly though, part of this initiative is conducting public opinion surveys about mule deer management in Montana. In particular, season lengths and the ability to hunt mule deer bucks in the rut. The survey showed that the majority of resident hunters value mule deer hunting greatly in Montana, and that they prefer the opportunity to hunt mule deer every year over hunting every several years with the opportunity of killing a more mature buck. Most also supported the long 5-week season that we currently have, and most also supported hunting mule deer bucks in the rut with a rifle. I happened to be one of the randomly selected survey respondents, and looking at the results on every single question, I aligned exactly with the majority of respondents. I did not always think this way though. I used to be a proponent of limited seasons, wanting to see more mature bucks, but through a combo of going to school for fish and wildlife management and seeing how other states' management styles work, I've grown to be an advocate for our long seasons and the ability to hunt mule deer in the rut, at least within Montana. Interestingly, if you polled the regulars on the Hunt Talk forum, you would get a very different result because it seems like the majority of the posters, including Randy often, think that FWP has managed mule deer into the ground. This is where it gets interesting to me because when you talk about the reason for a regulation existing, you can kind of boil it down into two main categories. Regulations designed for maintaining healthy populations and regulations to satisfy social desires. And the reality, whether you like it or not, is a lot of the regulations are often constrained mostly by social desires. Biologists definitely want to maintain healthy populations, don't get me wrong, but things like landowner tolerance and habitat availability, hunter satisfaction, those are the things that are going to be the biggest drivers in regulation changes. But all of that within the confines of trying to maintain healthy game populations. I'll agree that Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and their biologists could sometimes do a better job at explaining their data, but there simply isn't evidence to show that the current season structures impact herd health in a negative way. And we can't ignore one of the big reasons for this is the fact that there are so many sanctuaries in the form of private land where deer can escape and hide from public land hunters. But you can also kill a lot of bucks and still have a stable deer population. In fact, with the rise of chronic wasting disease, our liberal harvest of bucks could slow the spread of the disease, resulting in a net healthier population. I think at the root of most of the complaints for Montana mule deer management is a niche group of hardcore hunters who want to kill mature bucks. It's not about herd health, it's about wanting more big bucks. I've hunted in Montana for 21 years, and I've killed a buck every single year. The vast majority on public land. Also, every year I've passed up multiple bucks before I fill my tag, and I would categorize every year as a high quality experience. And yeah, a lot of them are 2 to 3 year old bucks, but those hunts have been some of the best memories of my life. In Wyoming, the corner crossing case that we've been discussing continues on. Both sides in the case have filed for partial summary judgment, basically saying that the judge should decide on some of these charges before that makes it to trial. If you're unfamiliar about the corner crossing case, the Cliff Notes version is that 4 hunters used a stepladder to cross a corner of public land to another corner of public land, at which point they crossed the plane of 2 other corners of private land. And now they're being charged with trespass, and it is moving its way up the court system. From what I understand, summary judgment usually only happens if one case is extremely strong against the other, so the fact that both sides have filed motions, everything will likely go forward with the trial. Fred Eshelman, the private landowner whose corners were crossed, claims that the 4 hunters are guilty of trespass and should pay him $7.75 million in damages. His claim is that he has control over who crosses his private land, including the airspace above it. The hunters, on the other hand, want the civil case completely dismissed, claiming that the landowner violated the Unlawful Enclosures Act of 1885, which prevents landowners from fencing others out of public land or using threats or intimidation. We'll have to continue to follow along and see what happens with these filings for summary judgment. For the deeper dive this week, we decided to keep it a little lighthearted. We're going to just have a BS session talking about some of the hunting-related myths and pet peeves that drive us crazy.
Fresh Tracks Weekly, episode 39.
Michael coming in with the radio announcer voice. We're going to have like a little sting intro here pretty soon.
Michael would be our guy for that.
Yeah. This is Nicole's first episode on Fresh Tracks Weekly.
It is.
Welcome,
Fresh Tracks
Nicole.
Employee. So, exciting.
The rookie.
The rookie?
Yeah.
I don't think so. What are we talking about, Marcus?
Well, this this time I feel like it's going to be kind of a BS session of us just talking about
Bullshit. That's bullshit.
well, we were talking about how people love to make certain claims within the world of hunting that seem far-fetched, and there's some myths that are perpetuated throughout hunting media or just whatever. Just you hear them from barroom banter and whatnot. But so we're gonna bring up some myths and then some pet peeves that people often, maybe I'll bring up some stuff that annoys me. But anyway, so
Sounds like a catharsis.
You get to start.
yeah, well, the one that we always think is funny and I was probably guilty of it to some extent before we went on llama trips, is talking about how heavy your pack weighed. And so people love to talk about, 100-pound hindquarter off an elk.
Yep.
Like, have you guys ever seen a real 100-pound hindquarter?
Never have.
No, I've seen a big bull elk this past fall with Scott Jones. That thing was not. I mean, it was off by what's 85 minus 100 or 100 minus 85, 18, 25 pounds.
Yeah, it was. I think
15 pounds.
15.
Good math. You see,
that elk was like the biggest elk that. I mean, I wasn't there, but
I've never processed one that big in my entire life.
Right.
And even with that, keeping everything on that hind quarter, Scott said when they hung it at the meat rack there, because the guy charged him by the pound, I guess it was 82 or 83 pounds was the biggest one.
Yeah, and
so
that's
big.
That's insane. So
Yeah,
and
that's
then
giant.
Kara's
Like-
bull was also the biggest bull that I've ever dealt with this year, and we weighed the hindquarters like 73, 74, I think,
Yeah.
something like that, and that was huge.
Yeah.
So most elk, like a lot of the the Raghorn Express that I'm used to like going on, you shoot a 2.5-year-old bull, those are like maybe 50 pounds.
Maybe.
Like on a big bull, big 2.5,
It's like someone who
3-year-old
says that
bull.
I caught my first fish.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everyone always goes shoulder width.
Yeah, until
That's
you
just
start
like the
weighing it.
natural.
Yeah.
And until you start weighing it or like measuring your fish, like something that I've started to do, because like I've heard all those stories. You talk to anyone, they caught 20-inch brown trout. It's like, do you
There's a lot
actually
of
know
20
what a
inch.
20-inch brown trout is? Because that's a big fish, And then like we've been fortunate enough to like Marcus said, go on some of these llama trips where you have to weigh and like balance out these panniers for the llamas to carry. Like I would advise people to go watch the episode when we were in Montana with Bo. And like that was the first time we had done it, and it was like kind of like, wow, that's crazy.
What were they? Like high 40 pounds?
I think those are
I
like
think
I
it was
think it was like
65.
50,
Okay.
54, 52,
Yeah, somewhere
somewhere
in
in that realm.
Three
But
and
it
a
was
half or 4.5-year-old bull.
Yeah, it was a 3.5 at least
Yeah.
year old bull. Could have been 4. I don't know. We didn't age that one, but it was a big bodied elk. Like by all,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Been around a lot of dead elk, and like that was a big bodied one in 54-pound hindquarter. So, yeah, that's a funny one to me because there's a lot of 100-pound packs that you hear about. I don't know.
and I also hear-
Perspective wise, though, like where I kept my horse in Butte, we had a herd of about 40 elk that would always be in with the horses.
Yeah.
And when you have them up next to a horse, it's amazing how small they actually look comparatively, like body size. And obviously this is it's a cow calf spike herd, but I don't even know that if you pulled a hindquarter off my horse that it would be 100 pounds, and she's a stout girl, so
would.
it might be.
It would.
But I mean, she's little, but
Okay.
like with the elk standing next to her, I think you can have like a comparison of like, this is a much leaner, tighter, different framed animal. The other thing I would say with packing, and I have helped pack out elk. I'm still a rookie in the elk world. I haven't filled my elk tag yet. That's my goal this year, knock on wood. But I don't think a lot of people like, whenever I'm packing out something, I'm not only carrying a quarter, I'm carrying extra meat, a heart, a liver. So like people might
is
be
true.
packing out like 100-pound pack, and they're like, well, I packed out that hindquarter, but they added an extra 20, 30
Yeah.
pounds of meat.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there have been numerous 100-pound packs. And
For sure.
I have weighed 100-pound packs on a scale, and they suck. They're not fun.
But it makes the
ruins
story
body.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the kid in Little League who hit a 500-foot home run or something. That's the guy who regularly packs out 100 to 120 pound loads. Give me a break.
All right.
Yeah, I feel like it's not sustainable, right? Like if you probably can do it a couple, like
One
it's
time.
probably not the best idea. You know,
Yeah.
it's probably on the limits of if you're going multiple miles, right?
Right. It's not good for you.
No, trust me.
Chase, what do you think, man?
Yeah.
I think, the packing out 100-pound packs just reminded me, like, a couple years ago I shot a mule deer, and I was like, I'm not that far from the truck. I'm going to throw the whole thing in my pack and do this in one go. And it was a challenge for me to even get off the ground with the pack on. But second, it was so muddy out there, I took 2 steps and slipped. I was like, I'm going to snap a leg out here, and I deloaded the whole thing and did 2 trips. But, yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing.
Was that one of those 300-pound mule deer we had?
Oh, easily 300
that's
pounder. He was
big,
big-bodied buck,
Yeah.
300 pounder.
What's another myth? Let's move on to the next one. What does anybody got a good one? I mean,
I was just reading one because I was kind of trying to prepare, and it made sense. Is like people say they can tell, like, oh, that's a big bull, like by its track. Like you look at a track. Is that a myth or is it not? I call it a myth, man, because there could be a very mature.
I think there is a select number of people who are very knowledgeable in that scale.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who probably think they are, and then they'll try to tell you. But I think, I'd say there's guys that could do it.
I will say that I have seen outliers of tracks that do not correlate to the antler size. So, and I don't know if I can speak confidently enough to like put body size in there as well, but definitely some like big antlered critters with not as big a track as you would expect, and then vice versa.
Maybe you could even throw in a bugle sound too.
Oh man, yeah, Bo's bull from last year.
In Wyoming.
That was a 350 bull all
those
day.
big guttural screaming elk. Those have to be 350 inches, right?
It was closer to 35 inches, but it was. What a story though. That was a good one. Yeah. For Michael and Nicole, you guys weren't there, but there's this little raghorn that we had not seen, and he just had the growliest bugle.
Oh man.
It was just like. We were sure that it was a giant.
He thought he was a big
and he was
timer.
holding up. We were trying to call him in, and he was holding up, wouldn't come in, just growling, and then finally steps out. And it's just like the tiniest bodied little raghorn. And both, well, Mike was going to shoot, and Mike's like,
That's like my dream bull.
I'm like, that's not him. And like, Bo's like, I'll shoot it. So Bo shoots it.
I
That
want
was
to be
great.
like on the opposite of Boone and Crockett. I want to be like Poon and Frockett, like the smallest 5-point raghorn.
Oh,
you can
man.
possibly
They're way easier to pack out.
We've done plenty of those.
yeah. I have a myth that I don't know that it's a myth, but as like a some people will know my story, but I got into hunting 8 years ago and have been in the hunting media world since then. And actually, I was on Randy's podcast when it first came out with Giannis Patelis when I was working at Meat Eater, and that was even before I'd gone on a hunt. So it's kind of fun to be full circle. But thinking about being a new hunter, one thing that was sort of perpetuated maybe accidentally for me was that as a beginner, the more you practice, like the more perfect your shot is going to be the first time. And it was sort of like this thing, and I worked really hard and still didn't pull off the shot because there was so much anxiety behind it, and there are so many people I think that get into hunting and have an idea of what like the mythical experiences, and being in the field is just so different when you actually are deciding to pull the trigger. So that's one thing I'll say for people that are getting into hunting is that it can be difficult and it gets better, but I think the beginner myth of perfection through practice is something we definitely need to be more honest about, especially on the media side.
Yeah, it's so hard to prepare, like what you're talking about with shots, like for an in the field moment. Like I feel like you just can't.
No.
There's no replicating that in a training scenario. I don't know.
There is
I still struggle a lot with it.
Yeah, me too.
Just like
Me too.
But over the years, it's become like I've become more okay with it, and I think that like the the harder you work and the more you understand how tough these animals are and build that respect for them, I think it pushes you to be as good as you can possibly be in the moment. But it also, you can find grace in those mistakes. So it's just something that I think about a lot.
You got one, Randy?
Michael told me that we're supposed to list pet peeves and myths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can
Give us one of them.
People who are late. If you can't get if you can't get the mattress off your back, you don't deserve to hunt that day.
That's true. I mean, hunting time is sacred, right? Especially for like non-us, like the people who are weekend warriors and like don't get to go out as much as we do.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. The flip side of that is your hunting buddy who you drive to the trailhead 3 hours before daylight opening morning, and he says, "Oh, I got to be home by noon."
ooh.
I should say the former hunting
Right,
buddy
exactly.
who
You start
does
to
that.
sort out who you.
Yeah,
None of my hunting
your friends
partners have
are.
ever done that to me, thankfully.
really. It'll happen. And that's when they become a
Or the
former.
guy who fills his tag 2 days early and he decides it's time for him to go home
Oh, yeah.
before
and
the trip
everyone-
ends.
Yeah, everyone else is supposed to go home. Yeah.
So how do you deal with somebody like that? Like, do you just straight up tell them? Have you
Yeah.
had to deal with people like that in
Yeah.
the past?
Yeah, when they called me and said, "Hey, where you at?" I'm like, "I'm at the trailhead. You were 10 minutes late, pal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry." You know,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
So
I just have ghosted people. That's kind of my strategy. It's just like no response, no text. I'm going by myself,
yeah.
dude.
I mean, that's just like I can't trust this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's on the pet peeve side.
Nice.
On the myth side, it's that pronghorn don't taste good.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's like sacrilegious. That's like grounds.
I
for-
think
If you want to keep away people from pronghorn hunting, though.
Well, that's
Not
true.
just-
the one thing about that one, well, I think you're right that it's largely a myth, but I think sometimes it is true that pronghorn don't taste good. But the reason they don't taste good is not because it's a pronghorn; it's because
Right.
how it was taken care of in the
Well,
field.
there-
Yeah.
Yeah,
And generally,
that's
people
like-
are hunting
Seasons, yeah.
pronghorn in hotter weather and chasing,
Yeah.
or some people chase them down, and
Yeah.
it's not taken care of in the way that it should be. So
Yeah.
that
I've
one I
taken a
think is
few, and
rooted in some reality
Yeah.
because of people
Okay.
not being great hunters and stewards of the resource.
All right. I'll go with that. But to say they inherently taste bad,
Oh yeah.
Oh, that was bullshit.
Yeah, I think well, we've done the blind taste test, and I really want to do a blind taste test again. And I want you to get in on it because I don't think that you'll be able to tell.
I'll know.
Huh.
I will know.
I'm glad that that's on the record.
Yeah, we should get that going
I will.
soon.
Okay.
When I killed my pronghorn, I've killed a couple now. I had Randy's voice in the back of my head saying me to get it out of there as fast as possible, get it skinned. And I mean, I've fed pronghorn to so many people that don't even know what the animal is.
Yeah.
Took it to the East Coast with me and fed it to my friends, and they're like, I've never had anything better than that. Like, that is one of the craziest pieces of meat I've ever tried. So I hope that I draw this year. I have a lot of points for at least a B tag, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think to me there's more variability in like meat wise between individual animals than there is between species sometimes.
Ooh.
Like alfalfa fed mule deer versus one that's lived on sagebrush its entire life, or it's this stuff that's on agriculture or had a tough life, or whatever. But yeah, we're gonna do the blind taste test again. It's gonna
All
be
right.
good.
Let me know when.
Yeah.
What do you got, Jace? You don't have anything written down. You just here.
Yeah, I know. I just
Drinking
kind of
coffee?
showed up to not knowing what's going on. No. I was going to say, yeah, I mean, I piggybacked off yours. I think, yeah, when people say they want to leave out on a hunt, like I got my tag filled and I'm ready to go home. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
if we had the trip planned for another week, what's
Right.
going on? What, you're not going to help me pack out my deer or elk at the end of the week when I
Yeah.
get one? So
Yeah.
I think that goes into just hunting partners, finding the right people, and
Yeah.
or just know what you're signing up for when you go with certain folks.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of fish in the sea, is what they always say when you're dating, right? Well, when you're looking for a good hunting partner, there's a lot of fish in the sea,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Get them people the hell out of here if they can. If they're going to go home after they shoot theirs, Chuck, cross that guy off the list or that gal off the list.
You know who has stuff that's great to say about hunting partners is John Barklow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
In his outdoor class.
In the outdoor class, he
he talks about
That's true.
hunting partners and how your good friends might not make hunting the best hunting partners. And I've experienced that to some degree, that the people that I really enjoy hunting with aren't necessarily people that I'm really close to, but people that have like a similar idea of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I loved, that was probably the most, I don't know, like not life-changing advice, but like surprising advice that I got out of that. I loved that outdoor class from him.
Yeah.
I got another one, food related.
Uh-huh.
When people say like an old mature deer, elk, whatever it be, a mature animal is going to be super chewy, and then your 1-2-year-old are going to be super tender. Which, I mean, from my experience, I've seen. I think it's case by case, the individual animal, but I mean, in my experience, I've had a really mature buck be super tender and then a 2-year-old buck be super chewy. So I don't know if I believe the whole old buck chewy, young buck tender.
Man. Yeah, some of the 7-8-year-old mule deer that I've had are the best eating, like great mule deer. I feel like on average it probably tends to be chewier the older they get, but I think also it depends. Like so much of that depends on like what you did hanging the meat and like in terms of like how quickly did you like bone it out right away, because then that's going to make a very different product than if you hung a whole deer carcass for 2 weeks before you started processing it. And all of that makes it, I think, more of a difference than age even, in terms of like the toughness of meat. And then or if it's been sitting in your freezer for a year too, I think that changes it. There's a lot of variability. But
I hunted deer and pigs with a group of guys in Texas, and Michael Hunter, the chef, was with us, and the guys kept saying, go for the younger pigs. And he intentionally shot like the oldest, stinkiest boar that came through his blind that week. And as a point, he cooked it, smoked it, like just did a ton of different things to it. And we did a blind taste test essentially, where there was a young pig and an older pig. And I mean, you have a really incredible, like, world-class chef cooking it, but there was no difference. It was delicious all the way around. Like, it was impressive.
Yeah, and if you slow cook or braise something, it's gonna just turn into a product that's gonna be very tasty, but also very hard to tell what it was.
I think it's very hunter, chef, and butcher specific.
Oh, for sure.
Fair
So
enough,
yesterday, Marcus made wild turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost ate the whole damn thing. But when I shot a wild turkey in Montana in, I think it was 2006 or 7, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I pretty much ruined it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a whole lot of variability based on the skill of the culinary complainant.
What's your pet peeve? I know you got one over there.
Pet peeve, when people ask, like, where are you going? Where were you? And it's just like, and then a lot of times I'm like, this out in the mountains, or I get nervous.
Marcus
people,
is the most secretive person about where he hunts.
And I realize how much of a hypocrite it makes me, because we literally produce hunting media. Yeah. So it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. But it's still like, and a lot of times it's people who aren't even hunters, because it's just like a natural course of conversation.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, where were you? Like, oh, we were up in central Montana. Like, oh, like what part? I don't know. It's central Montana. And then it's like
No Tom Creek.
Yeah. But it's just like, because and even when it is someone who's not a hunter, sometimes those are the worst people, because if you do sage drainage or a mountain range or whatever, they're not going to actually go there and hunt themselves. But then I've watched this happen multiple times, where they're having a conversation with someone else, or even it might be having a conversation with me, and I'll mention some like mountain range, like, oh, I just talked to somebody who was up so-and-so creek, and they saw a whole bunch of deer up there. And then this like information spreads like that, and you can just ruin spots. And so it is just like, it's a weird little pet peeve, and I realize it makes me a hypocrite, but that's my my pet peeve.
It's
I
like
don't think you're
telephone,
a
though. They
hypocrite.
often get it wrong.
Yeah.
They'll say Mill Creek. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Instead of,
Well,
like,
I like to
Secret
also
Creek.
tell people like, what were the two? I'm gonna forget my towns. I would have like two towns, like kind of between like Sula and Alzada, and like it's like and like two towns that people don't know.
Yeah.
And if they actually look them up on a map, they'll be like, wait,
Those
they're
400
like
miles apart.
12 hours apart.
Will you say like, oh man, I was in like northeast Montana?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, it depends on who I'm talking to, but yeah.
What's yours, Michael?
What's my pet peeve?
I don't care. Your pet
Oh,
peeve,
well-
your urban legend myth.
Well, my one that I prepared was the track one, but I'm gonna shift gears here because I'm a fishing dude, and it's the people saying like I caught a 23-inch brown trout. It's like, no way in hell you did. No way. Like, show me the picture, and then they'll show me the picture, and it's like 18-inch, which is still a nice fish. You know what I mean? But I think it's like, well, another one is the rack thing with like whitetails, or like I heard it all the time when I worked in the whitetail space. Was like, man, that was a 150-inch buck, and then you look at it, and it's like, man, I don't know. I think it's like good, not necessarily for bragging sakes, but just to know what you're talking about, to like maybe measure a couple of them, or like when you're in your boat, just measure a few fish just to see what
Maybe
it
just
actually is like.
Don't have to say numbers, but people love to say
numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like how we speak, and like I don't want to like glorify the big buck or whatever. Like it's cool to shoot big animals, but like know what you're talking about.
Well,
Like I don't feel comfortable telling people sometimes. Like a lot of people asked me years ago, I shot a bull in Idaho. I have no idea. Like we measured it. It's somewhere around 320 or 315. But I don't really know. Like,
right, yeah. Well,
because I didn't measure it.
Well, and it's funny too. So there's the aspect of that when it's a fish or a bull or buck that actually hit the ground, and so then there's that level of like making up numbers. But then when it's one that was either with the fish that was released or the buck that got away, those are the numbers that get inflated a lot.
Yeah.
Those ones are hilarious. It's like, oh man, he was easily 350.
Yeah.
Easily 350.
It's fun,
and
man.
then this is like, you see a picture like.
See, I like
fun.
I love that about the human experience. I think that like one of my favorite authors says that every memoir is 82% truth, and she's kind of BSing on like the amount of truth that's in there, right? Because everything changes when you look at like memory studies, like if even like when police are talking to people who are on a scene, like nobody remembers the scene correctly. Everyone has a different memory. So like I say exaggerate, make the story hilarious, make it as big as possible. Like you missed the biggest fish of your life, and like we all know it was like an 8-inch rainbow. Like that's just like, that is what makes it fun. Like I think that like having an imagination, knowing that you missed the best buck of your life, knowing that you lost a fly on that fish, like I love that. I'm gonna say that it's not my pet peeve. It's like one of the things I love most about these stories.
I'm with you on that. My dad was so full of shit, his eyes were brown. But when I was 10 years old, I'm like, well, Dad, that's a lie. No, Randy, they call it a story for a reason.
Exactly.
And then kind of the light went on, like,
A little
okay,
fiction.
when my dad was telling us a story, know that it was a story.
Yeah.
So I just accept that. We all run into people like that of, it was an 800-yard shot with my left eye, crosswind. It's like, okay, yeah, I get it. And there is kind of a fine science between the people who just get to the point of unbelievable, where their brother's like, you're full of shit, John. And then those who are like, oh, okay. I don't get worked up in it in the least. That, in the fishing world, they have this thing called the D-liar. Have you ever seen that?
No.
It's called.
Is it a ruler?
Yeah. Yeah. It's DE-liar. It's called the D-liar.
Is it like a branded
Yeah.
bump board?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah. But my dad, he never wanted one of those. He's like, no, this is.
It makes it way less fun.
Yeah.
I say go fictional. I want to hear about the most ridiculous thing that you saw?
I
you know?
want to be the most accurate, though. I want people to believe me.
Is that because you take fishing that serious, Michael?
I do. It's just like it does kind of irk me. I mean, it depends on who I'm talking to, I guess.
Yeah.
Like if it's like somebody who's like, the second time they've gone and they're like jacked up, I'm not gonna say anything. But like there was one story, like this is one of my favorite stories. Is like Cassie, like one of the first times we got on the boat together, she caught like a really nice brown trout, like 18, 20 incher, and she's like, "Oh my god,
20, right?
that thing was like 25 inches."
Amazing.
That was the first time I said I loved her. I was like, "I love you, honey," but like that's not a 25-inch. Brown trout, and it like kind of broke her heart.
You can't do that.
Cassie,
That's so mean.
Cassie, I'm not responsible for your whatever dissolution.
Cassie, I believe
notice
you.
here.
But that like brought up the conversation about if we loved each other, and that's when we decided we did.
But Michael, you said 18-20. That's a 10 to 12% variance.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought you were like a precision guy.
Yeah, I think I can't remember exactly if we actually did measure it or not. But it was not 25 inches.
Okay, here's the counterpoint.
Yes,
Do you
sir.
want people to keep their fish out of the water to measure them?
That's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Into the frying.
I don't know. That's
In
I
July.
don't want to piss my trout friends off, so I'm not going to answer that. It's like you should probably just put them back.
Well, so here's a little tip for fish measuring that I've seen is you take your picture with your fly rod, and then you have either marks on your fly rod, or you just know like where the where your text is.
Sure.
Like that's 16 inches from the butt to your.
Yeah, I have a 20-inch mark on. I did
so you
on
so
for
you
a
know
while,
like
yeah.
okay, that's
But does it matter?
it's just fun to know.
I mean, it's good to know.
Okay.
It's good to know because like
That's like
we'll just
asking
say, like,
you.
I
Does
prefer
it
to
matter
not.
how much that pronghorn behind you scores?
Not really.
But you have fun trying to figure
But
it
you
out. You
know
have a
it.
lot of fun trying
I've
to
been
figure
with
it
I
out.
do.
Yeah,
I
so-
do.
yeah,
It
you do.
adds another level of
Yeah.
game to it. I
Yeah,
guess.
that's the same.
That's the
thing.
same thing.
Yeah.
So and it's not. It's just the 20. Like I don't know. It's like the 350 mark with a bull elk. It's like that's the word that everybody says when they see a big bull elk. Is like I saw a 350.
Yeah.
And like that's what people say when they catch a big fish. Is like in the trout world, I caught a 20-inch brown. I caught a 20-inch rainbow. And it's like, man, that is a big fish. Like when you actually catch one, they're big.
Well, and the funny
And when
thing,
you actually shoot a 350 bull, it's a giant bull. Like it's a giant bull.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't either. I mean, I
Me
guess
neither.
like Scott's bull is like a wasn't it like
350, a little over that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
now we kind of know like what we know what one looks like on the ground, but like it's hard to tell on the hoof.
I will say too, you have to go easy on people. Scoring is really confusing. I cannot look at a deer for my life and understand what I can look at deer in here and be like, maybe that's 150 inches. I have no idea. So I think that like if you aren't like a total geeked out nerd about antlers, like most people just don't know. So it can be an opportunity for one, education, or two, laughter. So I don't know,
Truth.
like it's
Yeah.
a win-win,
Yeah.
right?
No one's talked about wolves yet.
oh, myths of wolves or
Yeah.
coyotes is even more fun for me.
Yeah, Marcus really.
Let's dive
Come
into
on,
it.
Marcus.
I
Talk
think
about the-
that coyotes are just absolutely killing and decimating the deer and elk populations, and I love killing them.
Well,
And I'm
one
saving
thing, I mean,
everything
I
when I
won't.
kill them.
I'm not gonna lie, the coyote can be a very efficient predator. But when people go out predator hunting and it's all for predator control and they're like helping save the world, saving all the deer and antelope by killing these coyotes, it's like unless you're systematically removing them from the landscape, like through aerial gunning, poisoning, or just like you are out there every single day killing every single coyote, like in the scheme of things, you're doing nothing. Like when you start to factor in multiple years and like it's this,
Or increasing the population.
yes.
And I think
the
that's
other
like
thi-
the other side of coyotes that people don't take the time to understand. I mean, everyone should read Coyote America.
Yeah, that's a good book.
By Dan Flores, but coyotes have an unbelievable ability to change the size of their litters depending on the population that's around them. And honestly, the less you mess with them, it seems the better. Like they will sort of find their place on the landscape, and if they're there, they're probably not going anywhere.
Oh yeah, well, and the other part of that book is like we did try to systematically eliminate them, and we
And they-
failed. Like,
They
we never got them.
adapted. They adapted.
But I mean, there are places, there's examples in like New Mexico, I think, is where I can think of some places where they do aerial gunning, and like they do increase like fawn survival through that. But it's just like, tens of thousands, maybe $100,000 a year per like, block. I don't know.
Wonder what happens to the rodent population.
It's
they
just
kill
like
a lot of rodents too.
Oh yeah, so I mean, it takes a lot to actually have an effect. So when you go out and you shoot your 3 coyotes in the winter, like I don't care, like I'm all for it. Like,
Same,
knock
yeah.
yourself out. But like to say that you're
God.
saving everything is like okay.
I think the coyote hunters, they need to just own loving coyote hunting more than trying to like justify it.
Yeah, dude.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I want to do a coyote hunting episode, and I was just like, yeah, I'm out here just making more
than,
coyotes.
like,
I
vigilante
shot 2,
justice.
they're probably gonna have bigger litters next year, so I'll have more coyotes to hunt next year. That'll piss people off.
What did people blame an unfilled elk tag on before 1995 when they reintroduced wolves in Montana,
That's a
Idaho,
good question.
and Wyoming?
Everyone filled their elk tag back then. It just
Yeah.
there wasn't an elk tag that went unfilled.
That's
There
a good
were
question.
a lot
Yeah, I don't
of.
know.
I feel like elk hunting was easier there for a second. I've heard some stories of just whole elk getting brought out
Yeah.
the Gallatin Canyon like
From
crazy.
your pops. Yeah, I heard
just
some
like all sorts
stories
of
from
people. Like
The past
they
is
used to
plated
weigh
in
elk
24
coming
karat
at
gold.
the check station. They would just because everyone got their elk out whole. Because why would you shoot one far away from the road when you could just shoot one next to the road?
Yeah,
And then you just go and weigh your elk at the check station. And
for some people. And then we decided we wanted to shoot all the elk in the canyon.
Yeah, I was say I feel like
well,
Back
I think
then,
that
maybe
one I think there's no denying that wolves did like
Oh, yeah.
the greater Yellowstone elk population. I mean, they knocked that down a lot, but it's just like there's a lot of factors there. It was probably overpopulated. There's a lot of evidence of vegetation just being absolutely destroyed north of Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And
So-
in Yellowstone.
For 7 years in a row, we shot 2,200 pregnant cow elk
yeah.
every January and February. Well, what's that? Just not counting the calves, that's 15,400 elk out of a herd of 20,000. But, we blamed it on wolves.
so. This when was
It
this?
was a team effort.
The 90s.
In the 90s?
1996 through 2002.
They were just giving away a ton of
if you went to you couldn't drive through Gardner. Yet they stopped you and said, "Here, you need a cow tag. You can't go any further."
Jeez,
I'm
I didn't know
joking,
that.
but I always joke and say that a lot of those wolves were driving F-150s,
Yeah.
and
Oh, that's funny.
I get it. It did have an impact, and it still has an impact, but it's not the cause of every unfilled elk tag in Montana.
Oh, for sure. Well, and then the other one too that we mentioned this on the last podcast, I think, but the mule deer, wolves killing like mule deer and stuff, or even elk in certain areas. It was actually mountain lions that are killing way more. Like as far as predation goes, mountain lions were killing way more of the deer and elk than.
They're impressive
than wolves were.
specialists. Like
Oh yeah.
it is impressive what they can do.
So anyway,
That's what I had written down here. Michael didn't even bring notes.
I had my
Nicole
notes.
got
this
that.
is like
man.
this
I've
is
been
just a
waiting
fun
about 'em.
one. This is like a fun. We got to have one of these every once in a while. We try to have some good educational topics.
You
but-
want to know what's the pet peeve for everybody out on the Hunt Talk forum?
What's that?
What is it?
Because
Everything?
yesterday the Montana draw results came out,
Yeah.
right? Last night, I don't know how many threads were started. Hey, folks, new here. I drew tag,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Anyone got any information?
Oh man.
And they're pretty brutal out there on Hunt Talk.
John Cushman comes in and goes, "Welcome to Hunt Talk."
Yeah. And or they'll say, yeah, this video right here will get you there. And it's a video of, who knows what, how to make peanut butter cookies or something. It's like, so I don't get too worked up about it, right? It's a public forum. People are going to come and ask what they're going to ask. But man, some people, it's like hit their trigger.
Well, that is a funny one too. Just like in terms of people drawing special permits for whatever deer, elk, antelope. In certain states, I feel like it is the culture that you do share that information because a lot of times you're going to get that once in your lifetime, and so it's like people are readily sharing all the intel that they learned when they hunted that. Like, oh yeah, I got my chance to hunt whatever, some really good Arizona elk tag. I'm never going to get to do it again, so I'll tell you everything. Versus if it's something you draw every
Like a
couple of
non-resident
years or
general
every
elk
year,
tag.
then people are way more stingy, which makes sense. So
Yeah.
that is an interesting one. But also I feel like just on Hunt Talk, even if it was one of those primo units, I feel like there probably is a little bit of like, oh, okay, you haven't earned your right.
Yeah, a little advice would be like, just in life, is like, get to know somebody, or like get to know the people on the forum,
Right.
and like have some conversations, and then like maybe at some point there will be some information shared. But it's not a good look just to come up to Marcus and say, hey, where'd you kill that bull that I saw on Fresh Tracks last week? Like he's not going to tell you. But maybe if you go hang out with him for a little bit, he might give you a hint, but probably not, because I'm
a bad example.
Yeah.
Read the book How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
Then go on Hunt Talk.
But I think that's a good point, Michael. Would you go up to some guy on the street and say, hey, I drew whatever tag. Can you tell me where to go? And the guy'd look at you like, who are you? What the hell? So there's this anonymous kind of persona in how we conduct ourselves online. It's like, whatever. I don't
It's just
get too worked
etiquette.
up.
There's just like certain types of etiquette that we have in our world, and
Yeah.
that etiquette might not make as much sense to someone who's in Ohio hunting whitetails on their family farm their entire life. And another opportunity for maybe a education that might, and like sometimes you learn by making that mistake. But yeah, that's it's pretty funny.
I don't know. I'm too old to get worked up about stuff like that. But some people really get,
Oh yeah, I'm
get
sure.
their blood pressure going over that. So,
All right, we should wrap it up. This is the longest we've ever gone.
Hey,
New record.
Thanks for staying
Fresh
with us,
Tracks
people.
Weekly episode. So, thanks guys for BSing.
Yeah, man, it's been fun. Thanks for having
It was
us,
fun.
Marcus.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.